Hi, welcome back to From Dropout to JD. I'm your host, Adeswa, and today we have a special guest, Carla.
Hi.
Hi, so can you tell us a little bit about yourself, like where you're from?
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I was raised in Boston, Mass. But when I was in fifth grade, we moved to Buffalo, New York, and then back to Boston. And then I moved to live with my father in Seattle in seventh grade. And then we moved to San Diego and then to St. Louis and then back to Buffalo. So I went to, I think, 5 junior high schools.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, by the time, and I was always a school skipper, even in 6th grade, 7th grade. But by the time 9th grade rolled around, I was barely in school. And in 10th grade, I left my parents and lived on my own and left school.
Okay, what do you think contributed to you being in and out of school so much?
Well, moving to the 4 corners of the country, in junior high school, I mean, that's radically different peer groups and styles of dress and ways of communicating. And I always sort of gravitated to the stoners and, smoke pot my whole time I was in school. And they were the most welcoming community, definitely. And I just wanted to stay home and watch TV. I mean, you can't expect a child to get really gung-ho about starting that many different schools. And I was a voracious reader. I always read, books for adults. I was always extremely curious. So I would just read all the time and didn't want to go to school.
Okay, so you dropped out in the 10th grade?
Early in 10th grade, yeah. And I ran away to California from Buffalo.
Oh, wow. How did you end up in California? Did you like
I had an old nanny that lived there and I ran away to live with her, unbeknownst to her.
Oh. So did you drive there? Like how did you get
Yeah,
across the
I went with
country?
2 other guys that I knew and they came back and graduated. They were seniors, but I stayed and got my own apartment.
Wow, okay. That's a lot at a young age.
15.
Yeah, that's wild. So when are you was there any like legal like fear you had about leaving school and being 15, and was it a different like laws back then?
No, I could not have cared less. I don't know
Okay.
what the laws were.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. So during that time after you left school, what did you end up doing?
I worked at a Sizzler and I worked at McDonald's. I actually became really proficient at McDonald's and uh, went to a corporate McDonald's store. I mean, I was really into working at McDonald's, and I would be with my grandparents in the summer on Fire Island, which is in New York. So I would be with my grandparents in the summer and I would stay from May till September with them. They would always take me in, no problem.
That's awesome.
Right. Well, eventually my mother and father, who weren't together, sort of convinced me to go to college to get my GED and go to college instead of high school. So what should have been my senior year of high school, I entered college.
Okay. So did you have to get your GED?
Yeah, I got
Okay.
it from the state of Missouri, and my score was high enough that it counted as an entrance exam to get into college. So I started college and I sort of did the same thing in college that I did in high school and skipped a lot of classes and sort of drifted along. I was in a dorm and, I got up to the usual sort of vandalism and hijinks that I had been doing in junior high. And so I finished the year and My parents were so happy. My stepfather got me a car,
Oh, wow.
and 5 days later, I eloped and got married without telling them.
Dang. Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then I got pregnant shortly after that. So I took that whole next year off and had a baby. And, my parents were like, here she goes again. And, but I went back to college after a year and a half, and somebody had told me to take Model UN, and I took Model UN, and something about standing up and speaking on behalf of Chile in that case. And we went to Harvard National Model UN, and standing up and arguing my case, I knew from that moment that I wanted to be a lawyer, and that was it. Nothing was going to stop me. And from then on, I took like 21 credits a semester. I got all A's in every single thing. I retook classes that I had not gotten an A in. And instead of floating from major to major, I picked the easiest major I could, which was sociology, so I could get the most A's that I could possibly get. And I graduated and got into every law school I applied to. And so that's the story of college.
That's awesome. I'm smiling because that's very similar to my story. Like, once I knew when to go to law school, I got straight A's. I switched my major to the easiest one I could do, which was also sociology. So that's really funny. I hope my story ends up like yours, or I get into all the law schools I apply.
Well, Soc had the least amount of credits for the major, and I had traveled so much in between, like nursing, elementary education, all these different majors. So I wanted the least credits needed for the major, and the rest were all these wasted classes I had taken and the core credits that were required. But I did get in everywhere. I am Hispanic, so I got underrepresented minority graduate fellowship, and went to University of Buffalo, got married, and I started law school with one child, and I ended law school pregnant with my second, ended up having 5 actually. I stayed out of the practice of law and didn't take the bar until 2003. I stayed home for like 15 years.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So what was law school like for you? Like,
I hated it. I hated it. It might as well have been junior high all over again with, cliques and people who, I'd be like 9 months pregnant walking around. I had a baby. That's right. I forgot I had a baby in law school.
Oh.
And I had a baby in November, and finals were in December. And I would ask somebody who I thought was a friend, can I borrow your outline? Do you know what happened in X class? No help. And that's the way women lawyers are generally. They don't help each other out. And I found that the most accommodating teachers were the adjunct white male older professors. They were the ones who would force register me into a class so that I could have a schedule that made sense, because I had a young child at home. They were the best, and the ones who talked the talk were the worst in terms of just giving me a hand. So I kind of did it all myself in law school.
So you would say that the worst part for you was like the social scene, like the cliques?
Well, yeah, it's not that I wanted to socialize with them. It's just that I wanted to maybe get their outline or be in their study group, or just any assistance at all. It just was not a helping environment.
Okay. And what did you like about law school?
I liked the fact that I had one criminal law professor who I loved, and he gave me my whole third year of law school was independent studies with him, that I got to make my own independent studies. He said, just create the class, do the work. So I did all kinds of stuff that wasn't on the bar by a long shot, but was interesting to me. And so.
Cool.
Yeah.
And then, so you said you had one kid before you started law school, another during your first year, and then your third kid.
I got pregnant. Well, he was born December 19th, so I can't remember if I was pregnant when I graduated or not, but
Wow.
one after the other.
Wow. So then you were at home for 15 years, and then in
Well,
2003, you
I
took the bar?
graduated in 91 and I
Okay.
got admitted in 2003. So I include my law school period as being home because I wasn't working. And if a kid was sick, I just didn't go to school. But what I ended up doing was perfect for my history because I am an attorney for the child in New York State. New York has AFCs, attorneys for the children, in all cases involving child custody, visitation, juvenile delinquency, abuse, neglect, paternity usually. So I do mainly custody and visitation, and, you know, coming out of the custody and visitation debacle that was my junior high school life and before that, and coming out of the GED thing. I mean, I have clients who are failing out of high school or just not getting it with the school process. And I can really talk to them and talk to their parents and show them that a GED is a good alternative track for a lot of these kids.
So is that family law? What
Yeah,
is that
family
considered?
law. Yeah.
Okay. So was that what you initially wanted to, like, I know that Model UN is what sparked that path, like the idea to go to law school. How did you come across family law for like between now and then?
All I wanted to do was maritime law. That's it. And I took the classes that were criminal law based because there was no maritime law here, but that's all I wanted to do. So when I got admitted, I started working for a maritime attorney, but he was sick, he was older, he ended up dying, and right as he was going to die, I found out about this job at the Children's Legal Center where I work. And somebody said, oh man, you should apply, you would be perfect. I didn't even know there was a family court. I didn't know anything about family law. I took domestic relations for the bar, but I didn't know there was family court. And I applied for the job and got it and found out there was a family court.
That's awesome. So
Yeah.
have you been doing that ever since?
Yeah, 19 years.
What do you like about it other than what like initially drew you into it?
It's great. I mean, it's completely chaotic. It's got crazy fact patterns. It's got litigants who, I mean, I just had a case end after 3 years, and about 1 year of it was based on a trampoline
Oh, wow.
that, that was at mom's that dad wanted, and some power tools. You know, you can't buy that kind of enjoyment. And, you know, screaming and yelling at each other in the halls, just, it's exciting. And my clients are all innocent. They're all the kids. If you're over 18, I'm not representing you. So they're great to talk to. You know, they text me all the time. They call me. They're fantastic. I love working with kids, and especially now with COVID, virtually interviewing kids is fantastic. I mean, I'm upside down in a princess tent, you know, they're holding me and Zooming with me or FaceTiming with me. I'm in their closet. They're showing me their cat. But it's great. I love it.
Interesting. So When I think of like law school and being a lawyer, I think of like the people who do it, I guess, to make a lot of money, and then the people who also want to help other people. And then of course there's some overlap. Would you say that you're more in it to like help people?
Well, it's a good salary,
Oh,
surprisingly.
okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not legal aid bureau level salary. So I'm an independent contractor too, so for the state. So I get a lot of time off. I can make my own schedule. I
Hmm.
mean, I've got to be in court when I have cases, but if I have a trial all day and we settle it 10 minutes into it, I'm going home.
Hmm.
So I don't have any billable hours. I don't ever have to voucher anything in. It's all taken care of. So I'm on a salary, but I'm an independent contractor. So that's great, is having that time off and not having to worry about billable hours and working crazy work schedule. But
Right.
no, I make fine money. It's okay. I'm definitely not somebody who's ever going to make, you know, $300,000 a year or something like that, but I don't care. I'd rather have the time off.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Interesting. So that's something of interest to me because all the narratives you really hear, at least I've come across, have been, oh, you work really hard 1 year, you get your summer internship, 90% of the time they hire you after and you have a job. So to hear that that wasn't the case, and that there's other ways to find your niche in law is really cool.
I never did a summer internship.
Oh, okay. What
Yeah,
did you do?
went to the pool.
Oh,
I
that's
had,
awesome.
had my kids, took the summer off, you know, I mean, I had no interest in going and working unpaid somewhere or paid. I mean, I had little kids. I mean, what was I
Mhm.
going to do? Get daycare? And I mean, it just wasn't an option. I wanted to have more kids. I was married to the father of my children. He was 2 years ahead of me in law school.
Oh, okay.
So, right. So he got out and he had to take the bar. And so he was working. And so I was kind of the one that stayed home for all of that time. Yeah.
Okay, so for our listeners who are also single parents, married with kids, what kind of advice would you give them on how to approach law school with kids?
Don't go to school if your kid is sick. I mean, don't worry about it. You can always catch up. The stuff isn't due till the end of the semester anyway. There's always a chance to catch up. And you don't need to try to be on law review. You don't need to be that person who gets that great clerkship. You don't have to, because you have a chance to make your reputation as you transition into the workplace after. And I do a lot of work in attorney well-being. I monitor attorneys who are in diversion from attorney grievance matters due to mental health and substance abuse.
Mm-hmm.
I also speak to CLEs on substance abuse and attorneys. And attorney well-being is really a focus now. We have the highest rate of substance abuse in the professions. It's a 15 to 20% of us. We also have one of the highest rates of mental illness. It's about a third of us are impaired in one way or another. And a lot of that has to do with the culture of big law, the culture that is self-imposed on my colleagues that I see, the young female attorneys who come out and they're just cutthroat and they won't settle, and it's crazy. They just drive themselves into you get that letter that they're coming off a case and they want to scale down their practice, and they've just gone way too fast for any kind of a normal life, especially if you have children. You
Right.
don't need to be like that.
Interesting.
Mhm.
So how, so I, maybe you've answered this, but like what I'm trying to figure out is like, I didn't know this was a job option. Like how would I research what you're doing to figure
Well,
out if I want to
it's
do that?
it's not in every state. Like California
Oh,
has
okay.
them, New York has AFCs. In other states, they can have a guardian ad litem, which doesn't
Right.
even, yeah, it doesn't even have to be an attorney. It can
Mm-hmm.
be somebody who prepares a report to the court. We are not like that. That is not what I do. I don't prepare a report for the court. I am an adversarial attorney just like anyone else. I represent a client's position, which I may or may not, excuse me, which I may or may not disclose depending on whether my clients have given me permission to disclose their position. I can bring orders to show cause. I can hold up settlements. I can do anything that any of the attorneys for the litigants can do. I'm just representing the kids. So
Okay.
we have that power in New York that in a lot of places they don't. They have social workers, maybe. I don't know, but they're not lawyers.
Right. I work for a law firm, and one of the practices that my attorney does is guardianships.
Mhm.
So usually she's the ad litem for minors or people who are incapacitated. So I didn't know that it was like state by state, like different ways of going about that kind of thing.
I do that work too on the side. I do Article 81s, we're called here in New York, where I represent the alleged incompetent person, whether it's um, elderly or mental illness or an infant settlement that needs to be approved, something like that. So I do have a private practice where I do that. And then I am a guardian ad litem essentially.
So when you got hired for that position, did they, so let me backtrack. From what I've understood, even though after you go to law school for 3 years, you still go through a lot of training afterwards once you get your job. Was that the case for you?
I followed my boss around for a month of
Okay.
absolute trauma as I started to realize like what I had gotten myself into and how incredibly traumatic a lot of these situations are. And I mean, abuse and neglect cases, custody cases are some of the worst. I mean, when you see some lone gunman has shot up some offices, many times they are attorneys in matrimonial cases, law firms, etc. And it was traumatic for me. I used to drive home crying every single day my first month or two there. But then I got used to it and I thought I was really used to it. And then I became pathologically afraid of bridges and I
Hmm.
couldn't cross bridges and I would dream of bridges and I couldn't see bridges on TV without thinking of falling off a bridge. So I did EMDR therapy
Oh,
and
awesome.
yeah, so I showed up for my first day and the guy said, "Do you have any trauma?" And I was like, "Trauma? No." And he said, "Well, what do you do for a living?" And when I said, when I said I practice law in family court, he laughed. I mean, he literally laughed. He said, "You have vicarious trauma. And I think if you practice in family law, criminal law, bankruptcy, social security, disability, mental hygiene, you have vicarious trauma from the stories that you hear and the stuff that you take in every single day. And it manifests itself in sometimes phobias, in sometimes, substance abuse, whatever the case may be."
So how, like, how do you manage that? Like you're still in the game. How do you deal with that
Well, I'm
trauma, contact trauma?
driving over bridges just fine, thank God. That worked. No, you think that you've seen it all and it's not going to bother you, but man, it sneaks up on you and you never know when that day is going to be that it sneaks up on you and you're just crying on the way home, or just you'll get one case and you're just absolutely rabid about it. Like I just had a case with a trans kid, and I was absolutely like just like rabid for this trans child that I got the result I wanted, and I was surprised because normally I sort of go through the motions at this point, but I got a case that I really, really cared about. And but then you'll get a abuse or neglect case that's just so beyond anything you ever dreamed somebody would do to a child. And usually I can handle it. It's just work. But who knows when
Okay,
it will sneak up again? I have no idea.
I see. So it's not like that. So you do or do not have coping mechanisms. It's just kind of like when it comes up, you deal with it.
I sort of watch binge, Amazon Prime and surf Reddit and, relax.
Okay.
And who knows when it will come up again? I don't know. As I said, I do a lot with attorney well-being. I am really conscious of it, more so than people who aren't in that circle. But I don't know.
Wow. Wow. Okay. That's really interesting.
But
Your life kind of sounds like SVU in a way.
But yeah, it is like SVU. You know what? There isn't a case on SVU that I haven't already had. I'm not kidding. It's like a CLE for me watching that show. It's pretty depraved in a way, but compared to billable hours in big law and having, partners breathing down my neck, and my brother went to Harvard Law School.
Oh, wow.
He came out and started working for a big firm, and they would put sleeping bags under their desks, and they had a cafeteria that was, there was smoked salmon. It was gorgeous. It was gorgeous. They would pick up his dry cleaning and drop it back off. There was a gym there. And the reason why is they never want you to leave. They want you to eat every single meal there and basically live at that law firm where he went. He left after a couple of years, went to the U.S. Attorney's Office, but if you couldn't keep me in junior high school, how could you keep me in a place like that?
Right. Interesting. I didn't think of it like that because I wouldn't say I was a skipper, but I never took like authority seriously. So if you were to tell me something, it'd be like, okay, that's cool, but like this is what I'm gonna do, and which is definitely not one of my like that's definitely a flaw, I guess you could say. So, and my goal right now is big law. So I'm just like, after hearing you say that, I'm like, well, how is my personality gonna work in that kind of environment?
It might work really well. It might, but it might also be so boring that you're ready to kill yourself. There are people I know who have come out and hung out a shingle. In family law, we have two panels. There's an assigned counsel panel representing the adults, and there's the attorney for the child panel representing the children. I just happen to work in a small collection of attorneys for the child who are paid by the state a set amount. But these panel attorneys, a lot are new graduates, new, admissions to the bar people, and they're literally hanging out a shingle and learning how to practice law on their own. And they are so busy, within 2 years, you can't get them on the phone. You can't, they're swamped. So that's another alternative for people who don't like to take authority, I guess.
Yeah. So kind of backtracking a little bit, when I asked you that question about how you got trained, I was really kind of trying to figure out, does law school like actually teach you something? Because I've been noticing with undergrad and high school, I learn all these things, but I'm never using any of the things I learned. So
Well, like
is that the same thing?
like Wagon Mound 2 and other incredible torts cases. Look, it didn't even prepare me for the bar, okay, much less for work. But law school changes you and turns you into a lawyer. And I have more in common with you sitting here on Zoom than I do with my husband, okay? I'm serious, it changes you into a lawyer. And from then on, you will always seek out lawyers at parties. You will always have communication with lawyers that is unlike your communication with anyone else on earth. And you can argue either side of an argument. You can switch sides. You look for fairness in any kind of an argument and nothing coming out of left field. You look for justice, and so it changes your mind. It does.
Okay. That's cool.
But it did not prepare me for this job.
Okay. Interesting.
Or for the bar.
Okay. Okay. Well, damn.
You learn it all in Barbary.
Okay. Barbary. Okay, I've heard of Barbary. I've heard of some other ones too. So I'll keep that one in the back of my mind. I was also told to like take classes that like the subject matter is on the bar if I can.
Yeah, but they're just teaching you the case law of extreme cases. It's not really the stuff you need to know. I mean, it's all in bar review, really.
Okay.
Just drill down on those questions, those MBE questions, do 50 a night. Just drill it hard for the bar. I mean, I didn't even know what commercial paper was, and it's actually part of the bar. What even, it's like warranties and things. I had no idea. First year, I took the first year classes. After that, I took classes that interested me. I took a whole independent study on Munchausen syndrome by proxy, you know, mothers who poison their children. I mean, how is that on the bar?
That's crazy.
Right. But I liked it. And
yeah, that's interesting.
My professor was willing to sign off on it, and they were great cases. I looked up and discovered, but not on bar.
Okay. So you're saying also that the stuff you learned for the bar, you don't use. Is it just like what do you think is the point of all the hoops they have you jump through to become an attorney?
Well, a lot of it is exclusionary to, protect people like me from people like you coming up and taking our jobs. So I think a lot of it is, make you jump through hoops to winnow the field of competition. I think 3 years of law school is important. I actually studied for the bar with a guy who only did first year and then clerked for 2 years. And then, so he was even less prepared than I was. And, but I think, it's a necessary evil to teach you how to be that thing we are.
Okay, cool.
The bar is ridiculous. The bar is ridiculous. It is. I mean, there's stuff on the bar you learn for the bar and you forget the day after the bar, you forget it and you never need to know it again, ever.
Okay. I mean, at least myself and the listeners can be fully like aware of what we're getting ourselves into. Like, even though it's this huge ordeal, like it's not like we need to stress more about it than we do for the test. Like, it's really just to pass the test.
I have never needed the rule against perpetuities ever.
Okay.
Yet I know it.
Okay. Interesting.
Like 21 years plus a life in being or something. But yeah, you learn stuff. I mean, a lot of mnemonics and things. I mean, studying for the bar is brutal. You need to, I basically gave my kids to my ex-husband and studied. I just studied the whole time.
And going from someone who like I would like, correct me if I'm wrong, but you seem like when in high school you're like very free spirited. I'm gonna do what I want. How did you go from that to someone who was like studious and disciplined and was able to like study for these huge tests?
Well, for the bar, I had just gotten divorced or
Okay.
separated. And that's why I was even taking it. I would have stayed home with the kids. So I knew I had to earn an income.
Okay.
And it was no pressure from my ex-husband. He's fantastic. He's a great co-parent. We are very close friends, 5 kids together. They're all adults now. But I had to earn an income. It was time for me to finally face this. And I'm not kidding. I had gotten pregnant to avoid the bar before. I was staying home and did not want to take that bar exam, but I knew I had to do it. And so I had no choice. Plus, you have to go every day. I mean, there's no avoiding it. So my bad habits could not follow me to the bar exam.
Okay. So I guess what I'm getting also is that the process kind of matures you in a way, would you say? Or
It's like this encapsulated hellish experience that I have never replicated in any other way ever in my
okay.
life.
That kind of sounds like I used to row. I rowed for 6 years and
Oh,
it kind
my
of,
my 5 sons all rode. Yeah,
are you
I got
serious?
one. Yeah, I got one who teaches or coaches crew now. Yeah.
That's awesome. I was
So
gonna say it's kind of like doing a 2K. Like you don't know
yeah,
how bad it is unless you actually do it. You can't replicate it. Like I could never explain to anyone how terrible doing a 2K is. But
I
that's cool that
totally
you know
get
what that
it.
is.
I certainly do. I'm a rowing mom.
That's awesome.
Crew mom.
Wow. So I don't know. I don't want to diverge too much, but where do they row? In New York?
Well, yeah, the Niagara River. I'm in
Okay.
Buffalo, so Niagara Falls is right here, and we've got the Niagara River, and they row there.
Do they do it for high school or for college?
High school, all of them did it for high school, and my youngest did it in college, and now he's graduated from college and he's coaching
Oh
high
wow.
school. Yeah,
Okay.
and
Wow.
he coaches crew camp in the summer too. Yeah,
Does are any of them lawyers?
you know what? My ex-husband is a happy lawyer.
Oh,
I
okay.
am a happy lawyer, and we can't get one kid to go to law school, and they look at it like it's poison. I mean, they're getting PhDs in philosophy.
Oh
Okay, I
wow.
mean, we're talking like stuff you're not going to use, and they won't go to law school. And the thing about law school, it's a trade school. It might as well be a VOTech, auto mechanics school. You
Hmm.
come out, you are that. No matter, you're not where you work. You're not um you're not where you work. You are a lawyer for the rest of your life. You are a lawyer. That's what you are. And so I tried to tell them that you would have this thing that no one can take away from you, and we love it. So you would love it too. They hate it. No way.
Hmm. So you said that you and your ex-husband are happy lawyers.
We are happy
How
lawyers.
how did you think, like in comparison to like your brother who I'm assuming he was in hell when he worked at that big law firm?
But he's a happy lawyer now.
And how did y'all all get there?
Well, I was always thrilled. I'm in the courthouse every single day. And I mean, now it's all Microsoft Teams. We're
Mm,
doing some in person. I just had a trial last week that was in person all day. So we're getting domestic violence and trials are in person, but mainly it's Teams still. Um, but it's court all day, every single day. And
mm.
unless I don't have court that afternoon, then I go home. But I love being in court. I know there are a lot of people who don't like being in court, but I wouldn't go there if I didn't have court.
Okay. So
So that makes me happy to be in a courtroom arguing.
okay, so why like what when I think of court, I think of like Law and Order SVU or How to Get Away with Murder, like all those lawyer shows. Is it actually like that? Like how would you
Well,
say it's realistically?
it's more like a hospital show, like ER, if that was still around. But I mean, I have an armful of files and I'm running from courtroom to courtroom to courtroom for cases that are being called 2 hours late, that are making me late for another case. And I'm being, paged to one place or another. And I am on the run, courtroom to courtroom the whole time. Now it's a lot better because there's scheduled Teams appearances for a half an hour.
Okay.
But you have to have recall. Like right now I have about 120 pending files, and you have to have a recall of all those files, all those fact patterns, everything your kid wants, because the correspondence is overwhelming. It's all email, and they want an answer right away on settlement proposals or just crap. So you need to know it. And I like the fast-paced nature of it.
Okay.
I couldn't handle doc review or anything big law.
Okay, so I guess to our listeners, for those of you who have dropped out of school, high school, college, and are listening to Carla's story and like hearing about her adversity and how she's ended up a happy lawyer, when you were getting through those, like I'm assuming you had tough periods in this journey, what did you use to ground yourself or get through to like the next day?
Well, if you're talking about junior high school and the like smidgen of high school I did, nothing. I just wanted to be away from my parents, living on my own, working, and have babies. I wanted to have children and get married from a young, I mean, my parents were divorced when I was young. It was a very chaotic environment, and I just wanted my own family. So what I really wanted to do was get married, and I wanted to get a job and get my own place. And so those things were important to me. So I jumped the gun seriously and did it at 15. So then law school, I told you about the Model UN and learning how to speak on behalf, to advocate, that was so important to me, to be that mouthpiece and to advocate on behalf of a cause, whatever it is, and to stand up in front of a group of people and talk. That was just magical to me. So law school was just 3 years of hell that I used to get where I wanted to be.
Okay. And I have 2 more questions before you wrap up this interview. So the first one I have is, do you have any advice for anyone thinking of becoming an attorney?
Yes, take the easiest classes you can take and the easiest major, and I am talking sociology, because what does a sociologist even do? I bet you can't even answer that. And you were a soc major too. I have no idea what sociologists do. All I know is the classes were, fun, and it was easy enough. I took a lot of history too. And take, English, if English comes well to you, take a lot of English classes, film, recommend film, and get those A's, rack up those A's. And if you can do anything on the side, like I was a cheerleader, I had Model UN. Thankfully, I had my minority status, which really helped, I'm sure. At least at that time, it really did. And it does now. I mean, it helps. So I got into law school, and then law school was a means to an end. That's it.
Okay. And I'll piggyback on that. Like, if you know you're not a good student, or if you're not passionate about it, please just take an easy major. Like I was an English major my first time around, and that means I had to read a book consistently every day and like read so many pages for my next class. I did not have the personality for that. So just know yourself and pick an easy class.
Absolutely. And if math is your thing, load up on math. It was not my thing. And there were huge holes. I mean, that's the thing you talk about from dropout to JD. When you get to college, you will not know how to add and subtract or multiply or divide or whatever the case may be. So I came up against math. I had to withdraw from basic algebra. I had never had anything approaching algebra in my life. So I took statistics, and I got through statistics, and that was tough, but I made it through. And there are other things. I mean, English, I read like crazy, but I had never really written a paper in my life. So I got my first paper back and it was a C, and I thought it was like the best thing ever written in the world. So I had to learn in college what I normally would have learned, in junior high and high school.
Right.
So
Interesting.
You will have huge gaps in your education if you're a dropout.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's something I kind of I guess regret. I mean, honestly, I don't live with regrets. Everything I've done is for a reason, but I will say that when I went to Rutgers, that was the first school I went to. I did have amazing professors who really loved what they did and like really made their lectures super engaging when I showed up for class. And I just miss that environment of like people just passionately talking about what they love and in front of a room full of people who are eager to listen. So that's something. And then my last question is, I guess on the topic of regrets, if you could go back and change anything in this whole process, would you? And if so, what would it be?
Well, I hated my law school, which was State University of New York at Buffalo.
Okay.
Hate. And I won't even go there, and I won't even drive by the place. I didn't even get my diploma. I didn't go to graduation until I needed it for admission to the bar. And if there's any regret, maybe I regret not going to one of the other law schools that I got into. But as I said, I had a child and I was about to get married, and I wanted to stay local in Buffalo, so I did. But I a little bit regret. I think it would have been cool to go to Syracuse or Vermont or something. But I really don't have regrets. Law school got me where I wanted to be. Right. And I am where I want to be.
So with that attitude, I guess, did you take out loans, and would you recommend people avoid it, or is it like a necessary evil to get to where you want to be? Like, what are your thoughts on loans?
Well, check this. My college, my mother taught at my college, so I was tuition free for 4 years. I still took out max loans to live off of. Okay. When I went to law school, I went on the underrepresented minority graduate fellowship. So I got free tuition and $1,000 a month. So $10,000 a year for 3 years. I still took out max loans. So right? Well, you can't live on $1,000 a month.
That's true.
So I'm still paying back loans due to deferments and forbearance, et cetera. I have a pretty hefty loan thing, but I don't regret my loans. I mean, I wouldn't have been able to go to school without them. Right. And look at people in medical school, they're graduating with $300,000, $500,000 worth of loans, but they're going to make that money back.
Right.
It's just a means to an end. I don't regret my loans.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Carla.
It
was a pleasure talking to you, and see you all on the next episode.
Okay, thank you. Bye.